welcome everyone to another Conversations in the Void. I am Graveyard, joined as always with my off-screen producer, Salem. Make sure to say hi to Salem in the chat. He loves hearing from each and every one of you. I'm excited for our guest tonight, as I always am. He is a writer, he's a producer, he's an actor, he's a stage actor, stand-up comedian. Please welcome to the show, Marc Sheffler.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming on. I know this has been work in progress for a couple months now, and it's finally here.
And here we are after all this. This is the blind date we promised, and here we are.
Yes. So, Marc, before we jump into your career and everything you've done, we have some introduction questions just to get to know you a little bit more. So how did you get into the world of entertainment as a whole?
Well, the actual story is this. When I was 10 years old, I was living with my father alone, a single parent. My dad was this kind of cigar smoking, silk suit, custom-made silk suit wearing, pinky ring, Cadillac driving, aluminum siding salesman. And needless to say, he had no thought that was inside any box whatsoever, right? So, and this is how I was raised, and quite, amazing for his time, right? To be like that. That's how he was. So, a little before my 10th birthday, he came up to me and said, "Hey, you're going to be 10 soon. It's a really interesting number, double digits, new decade, and what makes it really fascinating is you go into it a little boy, but you're going to come out of it a young man. So let's kick it off right, and I'll get you anything you want, within reason, right? So Just tell me what you want." So being a young male child of my times, I jerked. I want the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
So my dad said, "Okay, I can't promise I'll get him, but I promise I'll try. We'll see what happens," because that's how he was. My dad was one of those kind of guys that would, he didn't verbalize it as succinctly as this. He was the kind of a guy that if I asked him for something or he had to do something, his attitude was, the difficult I can do right away, the impossible takes me a little while, so that was the kind of tone of his existence. So I don't know how long, maybe a week later, a few days later, he said to me, "Okay, look, let's talk about the Stooges." And I said, "What?" He said, "I can get him." And I'm like this, what?
Wow.
He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I can get him. Here's the thing. Your birthday's in September. You're going to be here in January for 2 weeks anyway. So why don't we just celebrate? I'll do whatever you want, but why don't we celebrate your birthday when it happens? And then come January, I'll throw you a big party out at the Holiday House where I'll hire the Stooges for the afternoon and we'll have a big party." So, who says no to that, right?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not fucking destructive. Who says no to that? So I said, "Right, sure, okay. You can change my birthday in January. I don't. It doesn't matter, So the great thing was he then makes the deal with the Stooges and books the date. And so the first Saturday after the holiday in January, it was the 10th or maybe even a week early, but that first Saturday afternoon, the Stooges were in town for 2 weeks. About 80 friends and family show up at the Holiday House. And there we are. We're in the audience. Stooges come on, and they get through about half of the show, and Mo stops the show and looks at the audience and says into the mic, he said, "We're here to celebrate Marc's birthday. Where's Marc?" So, my dad nudged me and he said, "Stand up, stand up." So I stood up and put a spotlight on me, and Mo said, "Your dad tells us that you're the Stooges number one fan in Pittsburgh, or the number one Stooges fan in Pittsburgh." And I shouted back, "Well, I am." And Mo said to me, well, we'll be the judge of that. Why don't you come up on the stage with us? So I didn't know what to do. I was, and my father leaned over to me and said, look, there's no time to explain this now. Just get your ass up on the stage. So, okay, Dad, he always gives me good advice. There I went. I went up on the stage, and they handed me a mic. And, Curly Joe DeRita and Larry shook hands with me, wished me happy birthday. And they started doing a couple of bits. And I knew the material so well that I slipped myself in the Curly person. And they were floored that I had the timing down because, I was just mimicking what I had seen. So I knew their rhythm.
Right.
So about a minute later, minute and a half, I don't know, I'm guessing, Mo stops the show again, and he puts his hand on my forehead, and he says, Mark, we dub you the fourth Stooge. And at that moment, those 80 people sounded like 8,000 with applause and banging the table and, just screaming. And in that moment, I felt the feeling of being loved by an audience. They were no longer friends and family. They were an audience, and I felt that embrace. And as I look back on it, knowing how my life unfolded from that moment, I can now say with a better choice of words that got like an airplane runway lighting up in the night. And I saw I knew exactly the direction of my life, and that's the moment. And everything I did after that, consciously and unconsciously, was in furtherance of that situation, of that goal. So that's I think that's how I got started. That's my feeling.
Yeah, that's amazing. I grew up watching the Stooges too.
You see that picture?
Yeah.
That's me and the Stooges on that day.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like my version of how people get addicted to opium, right? They try it once and it makes them feel better than anything ever in their life, and they keep chasing it. So, instead of chasing the dragon, I was chasing the laughter. I was chasing the laughs. And I knew, because I already had experienced being funny and people liking me for that. As a kid, my parents were divorced. I spent a lot of time in the movies. I spent a lot of time watching TV. So I was picking up shit from, to fill a void of my life. It was fun. It was entertaining. And then when I could reproduce it, I got laughter, I got people laughed. So, right. I guess that's how it is. The late Richard Lewis and I were friends, and we once, if I get a little misty here, and we were talking about our backgrounds, right? So I told him a story. I said, when Last House on the Left came out, and it kind of exploded, I called my mother and I said, hey, Mom, this movie that I'm in, Last House, is like really just like exploded, like 1,100 screens. And it's really, and the whole cast, we're all getting like famous. And my mother said, what do you mean famous? If you're so famous, how come I never heard of you? So Richard then tells me a story about his first Tonight Show appearance, when he calls his mother and he says, Mom, I'm going to be on the Tonight Show. And she said, and I got this material, it's going to be great. And I'm, a little nervous. And he's waiting for her to say something. She said, who else is on? And and I went back to Richie. I said, well, you don't come from nowhere. It's like, yeah, of course. So.
Yeah, that's, like I said, I grew up watching the Stooges too, obviously reruns and everything too. And I just remember my first foray into kind of writing and something in school was we had to do a skit for some, I think, English class, and we ended up doing a Three Stooges type skit, and it just, it's been almost 100 years of Stooges, and it's just been, I think, a cement in like every kid's childhood. It feels like.
Well, yeah, certainly male children. I'm not so sure about
Yes.
women.
Yeah.
You know, I've wife claims to love the Three Stooges. Um, she said, and she grew up in Colombia, right? And she used to see their films in Colombia.
Hmm.
Okay, she's my wife. I'll take it for that. I've met very few women, who
Like the
claim to be.
slapstick. Yeah.
Yeah, they really, because when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because in a traditional, kind of older version of male female relationship, the Stooges, they weren't very good prospects. It's like these are the type of guys, those women's mothers, that stay away from this. There's no future with their bums. So, and men don't ever see it that way. They never
Right.
look at they don't judge their socioeconomic status. Like, a woman watches the Stooges and say, they live in a flea bag hotel, and guys they go, they do? Geez, I don't know. I just watched Mo Smack Curly. I don't know. Did they live in a hotel? You know. So we look at it differently. I think our brains function and absorb it differently. But I'll tell you, that was an amazing experience. And
Yeah.
and you,
That. Yeah. That's awesome. Now, obviously, you've done stand up, so that was kind of your path into the stand up path as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I do. Stand up is just an amazing art form, and I've been lucky to have been able to do it, here and there, back in the day, places than
Right.
now. But I was, let me see, I dropped out of college when I was midway through my sophomore year. Went
Okay.
to went to New York, in the Catskill Mountains. Got a job in the Catskill Mountains as the stage manager of the Raleigh Hotel, which was the second biggest hotel back in the day. Like, this was 19. I'm gonna say, yeah, this is like 1968, 69
Hmm.
actually, summer of 1969. So I conned my way into a job stage managing this 1,500 seat nightclub, by pretending to have experience. Uh,
Right.
and yeah, right. And so I ended up staying there for a year. And during the year, I met every stand up comedian who was working the Catskill Mountain circuit, met them, worked with them, saw them multiple times, and used to go down to the city and go to the clubs down there and hang out on days off. I'd have like 1 or 2 days off a week, depending what season it was. So I really was immersing myself into that scene. And then, about a year after I was at the Raleigh, one of the comedians that I got to know, a guy by the name of London Lee,
Hmm.
who had been on Ed Sullivan and Carson and Merv Griffin. He was a big on the East Coast and was very well known on the East Coast. Offered me a job as his road manager, and
Okay.
he said he'll move me down to New York and get me a place. And I had to drive him to dates, and it was like a schlepper job. So,
Hmm.
but you know, it was a one step closer to where I wanted to be. So what happened was, I stayed with London again for about a year, and I started out like driving him to club dates and driving him working for him every day, doing menial tasks. And then I wrote a couple of jokes for him that really fucking worked.
Oh.
That in his act, yeah, like really fucking worked, like home run jokes. And he said, "You got any more of these?" I said, "Yeah, I guess I'm learning how to write jokes." So in that experience, since I was his like errand boy for quite a
Hmm.
while, he had two writers, comedy writers, who wrote material for him. A guy by the name of J.K., who was this massive, corpulent, slovenly fellow whose toupee was like always on sideways, and whose cure for chest pains and cardiac issues was a piece of 9-layer chocolate cake. So,
Oh.
and then there was another guy who was the exact opposite of J.K., a fellow by the name of Sherry Cloth, who was also a writer of stand-up material. And J.K. and Sherry Cloth were considered to be at the time the two top stand-up writers in the New York area, like for people who had real comedians who had money to spend, right?
Yeah.
So I used to go like the difference was Jay would hand London jokes written on napkins with cake smudges on them, and Sherry would hand London jokes neatly typed. I'm sure he was like a Buck Henry looking guy, so he would type them up very neat and in a little folder. But I used to get a chance to read everything, and I got a chance to see stand-up jokes on the page, and I started to, I guess at that moment, absorb joke structure from a more, I guess, didactic point of view, because I was actually seeing them on paper. And I just, so I wrote a few more jokes for London, and then I became part of his act. We had a bit that he had done with his previous road manager that he then had grown comfortable enough with me to bring me out on stage. So I did that, and then one night, I don't know, I've been working for him maybe 9 months or so on a Saturday night at one of those hotels. I think it was Everly, I'm not sure, but it sounds right in my head that he had a show, and we did a bit that goes where he halfway through his act he would say, "I'm thirsty, I need some water," and he would look to the wings and he'd say, Mark, could you bring me some water?" So I would bring him a glass of water on stage. Let me backtrack for that. The whole theory behind London's material was that he was the son of an extremely wealthy Jewish manufacturer of dresses, Michael Dean's dresses, and his family had hundreds of millions of dollars, and that was pretty true. I mean, see, he was like one of the Trump sons if they weren't like an asshole and had a sense of humor, So he was like the funny version of those guys.
Yeah.
So he calls me out on stage, and the bit we would do would be like he says, "Thanks for the water," and then I turn to walk away, and he said, "Hey, one more thing." I said, "What?" He says, "Who am I?" I say, "Oh, you're the boss." And he said, "Who are you?" I say, "Me, I'm nothing." And he said, "Well, what does that make me?" And he says, "Makes you the boss over nothing." So stupid vaudeville joke, old vaudeville joke. Gets a laugh. So, and then I would just cross out, right? The laugh would cross me out. So one night we do the joke, and I turn and I hear from him, "Hey, wait a second." I said, "What?" I turn, I go, "What?" He said, I need another 5 minutes. I'm not feeling well. Can you do 5 minutes? I said, I was shitting my pants. There were 1,500 people, 1,200 people out there,
Yeah.
I had no preparation, nothing. And so, I've always been a believer that in life you get these moments where it's like shit or get off the pot moments, It's like you either got to step up or step out. So I said, "Yeah, I can do it." So he hands me the mic, he introduces me, and he says he works for me. He wants to be a comedian. I'm going to take a rest here and rest my voice a little bit, and I'll see you in a few minutes. I did 5 minutes, and every joke pretty much worked. I couldn't believe it. And I hear him from behind me going, all right, get the fuck off the stage." So what happened was driving back to New York, and to New Jersey where he lived, and he said to me, "We're not going to do that every night." I said, "No, it's okay, man. I'm good. I'm not greedy. I got the chance to do it once. I feel great." So we ended up doing it a couple of more times, and my last gig with him was at the Copacabana, and I got a chance to do stand up on stage at the Copacabana as part of his act.
Wow.
That was a fucking thrill. I
Wow.
gotta tell you, that was a thrill.
That's
That
awesome.
was, man. I'll tell you, that's one of those things in my life. I go, whoa, I fucking did that. You know?
Right. So, how
Yeah.
did you go from writing jokes and working with comedian to be in Last House on the Left?
All right. So after the after the Copa thing, I
Hmm.
had decided. I'd already made a decision before that, but I said I told London, I said I got to branch out, so I'm giving you notice, right? So
Hmm.
he understood, and I moved from New Jersey into the city, into Greenwich Village, and somehow hooked up with a manager. I can't believe I can't even remember how it happened, but I hooked up with a manager who had offices in Rockefeller Center. It was a division of Lloyd Greenfield Associates. Lloyd Greenfield and Gordon Mills managed Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck at the time.
Wow.
So it was like they were like big time managers, and they had
Yeah.
a guy working in there who was out looking for comedians. So he signed me, and we became friends. And then one day, luck would have it, I stumble into his office to say hello, and he tells me I see him saying, yeah, okay, he's up, and it goes like this, classic Holly, show business. And he rips a piece of paper off his desk, and he says, "I got your movie audition immediately. Go to this address. You'll meet two guys. One guy's name is Sean, and the other guy's name is Wes. Wes and Sean. That's right, Wes and Sean." So I go down there. I meet a guy named Wes, tall, skinny guy, a little older than me. At that time, would have made him like 23, 24. Uh, kind of a hippie looking guy. Then a shorter, portly, little more portly fellow with a
Hmm.
mustache. His name was Sean. Of course, that was Sean Cunningham and Wes Craven.
Yep.
So yeah, I forgot to give you their last name, right? So so I do that. I'm a prick sometimes. So they gave me the script, and we read the scene, the bathroom scene,
Hmm.
where I'm sick, and then the dream scene where I'm dreaming about what happened to Mary.
Yeah.
They said, "Thank you very much." I said, "Thank you very much." Went back to Dick's office, and by the time I got back there, they had already called and said, "That's our Hitler. That's it." So that
Wow.
was how it happened.
Now, I've heard you have, I said with stand up, with the violence and everything that was in Last House, I've heard you had some pretty interesting run-ins with people thinking that you're a scary guy just because of that movie.
Well, it, not so much me alone, but David Hess and I were very close friends. With that movie introduced us, and from
Hmm.
that spawned a relationship and a close friendship that lasted until the day he passed away. So when Last House was released, the whole story of the Last House release, it plays into what you asked, but to answer your question more thoroughly, I'll give you a little background. When they made the deal to make Last House with Hallmark, I
Hmm.
forget the actual number. John had about 30 prints to deliver, very small amount, because the film was designed to be shown as part of a double feature at the drive-in theaters that Hallmark owned in the Northeast.
Hmm.
They had some algorithm where they invested X amount of dollars, and they just ran it in their own theaters over a course of a couple of 3 years. They'd make their money back plus, and then own all the rights. I mean,
Right.
that's how their money. So it was just a money deal for them. So what happened was, what we I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, so we make the movie, and movie comes out. Sean delivers the prints, and everything's going along okay. One day, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times writes a 3.5 out of 4-star review of Last House and blows it up like you will not. You can find it online.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blows it up. You cannot fucking believe. And I am telling you, the very next day, I walked into Sean's office, and he was running around like a lunatic. He got an order for 1,100 prints. Okay. And there were only like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 places in the whole New York area where you could make a print.
Oh.
If there were that many, there may have only been 3, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Philochem, whatever it was around. But I don't think, you know, there weren't a whole lot of places where you could produce them. So he was scrambling, and it just blew up. Okay, so then that led to a publicity campaign that papered the subways and papered every available space with that very iconic Last House poster, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
one in black and white. It's only a movie. It's only a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And prominently on that picture was Hess holding a knife, holding a machete, right? So everywhere we would go, people would jump to the other side of the street. Very few people were interested in finding out if he was the actor in the movie or if he was in the, because there were a lot of people. I thought it was a documentary, you know, the way Wes shot it. There were people.
Oh.
There's some people who thought it was real or you know, it was. So yeah, people just really freaked out. Hess was the one who got the most of that. Nobody gave a shit about me that way. I wasn't a threat to anyone, but Hess, 100%. He, you know, to laugh our asses about it too, but it happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be like just an interesting feeling to see that happen. Like, okay, you know, you're doing stand up and then you make this movie, and then all of a sudden people are unable to differentiate you guys from the characters you played.
Well, the thing is, you know, one of the things that gave Last House the kind of, you know, dark gravitas that it had was that nobody knew who we were. So
Right.
it had this aura of believability because nobody could look at us and say, oh, there's the guy from that movie, or there's the guy from this movie, or the girl from this movie. She's not really dead. That's the girl from this movie. So the
Right.
fact that nobody knew who we were, and the film was as upfront and in your face as it is, added to, you know, it kind of gave this weird reality to it.
Mm-hmm. And
So
I said that's interesting, and I think you see it even in today's world that you can't differentiate actors from the roles they play because you think, oh, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark, and you can't separate it out.
Well, these days, anyone who believes that's a little.
Well, yeah.
Back then, back then I can see, you know, the time period and what was going on and how kind of ahead of its time Last House was. I mean, look, here's the thing. You never fucking know, right? Like you hear people say that. You never know. We who made the movie, let me go maybe back to it. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie, right? Regardless. You're a professional, you show up for work, you're gonna do your best work. You're gonna put it out there for the good of the project, right? So we all did that. We all showed up, and even though we you know, for many of us it was our first, we all had some experience doing something professionally in the business, and so we had an ethic. Every one of us, John, Wes, everybody who was involved in that movie, whether it was crew or cast, showed up and did their jobs exactly the way they were supposed to have done and better. And that's why everything worked. One of the reasons everything worked out. So I mean, it was an extraordinary experience. You know, it was wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah. I mean, did you have any feeling that this was going to be something huge and different at that time?
None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, Freddie and David and Sean and Wes had a cast and crew screening of the answer print at a post house on the west side, Filmways, I think. And we all walked out of there. The three of us, we walked out of there, and we said, "Well, we're glad we all met. We're going to stay friends. we're going to be friends forever, but no one's ever going to come to see this piece of shit. And then this Roger Ebert review comes out. You don't fucking know. You
Yeah.
just don't. You don't know. So all of this, everything I just told you, go through decades with the film. 2 years ago, I'm at my mother-in-law's house in Colombia, where we go almost every year for 3 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I get an email from a friend with a link to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. I click on the link, and they're running an exhibition of 6 films from around the world in the entire history of filmdom. Okay, with the
Mm-hmm.
theme films that have had a visceral effect on the human body. 6 films, entire universe films from the time they were invented.
Yeah.
One of those 6 films was Last House on the Left. You never fucking know, man. I couldn't from that moment where Freddie and David and I stood outside the filmway saying that no one's ever going to come to see this piece of shit, to being part of an exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
Never know. You don't know. So it's like, all right, I'm going to take it. I'm going to
Yeah.
take being part of, I'm a grain of sand on on American film history, but I'm a fucking grain of sand,
Yeah. Yeah, I love hearing stories like this. This is why I do the show too. Doing the show for a couple of years now, I was able to be introduced to independent horror creators and directors. So I've been able to be in stuff and help be on set and help make
Cool.
stuff happen. And it's like to me, it was quite addicting. Like this is awesome. I in high school I did theater and drama for a number of years. I was a wrestler. I was editing stuff for the past 20 years, and I'm finally able to do stuff like this now too. And it's just an awesome feeling just to be on set,
Yeah,
to
well,
see behind the scenes and everything.
yeah. Imagine when you're 10 years old and your whole and the road to your rest of your life lights up for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. So,
Yeah.
how did you get into? Obviously, writing jokes like that. Now, how did you get into writing for like TV shows like Charles in Charge, Harry and Henderson,
Well,
Sister?
okay, so I got again really lucky. Um, I sold the first script I ever wrote in 1974.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, wait, 1975. I was in New York. I had an idea for. Okay, I'll get real straight with it. When Last House came out, I found out that one of the perks of being in a movie that's getting a lot of publicity is a lot of women who you might necessarily not have access to suddenly become available,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, when I went back to Pittsburgh to promote Last House when it opened up there were girls from my high school graduating class who a scant 3 years earlier wouldn't give me the time of day. Now were willing to give me a whole lot more than the time of day. So I thought, good career choice. So what happened was Last House goes up and it goes down real fast in the world of,
Yeah.
real films.
Right.
Quite a way for a couple of weeks and was replaced by some real movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything disappeared. It got all of that went away. Like I got a chance to taste it, and then boom, it's gone. So I got to figure out something else, man. I got to figure out. I gotta replace this.
Mm-hmm.
So one night I'm at a party, and I got talking to a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous kind of model looking girl, woman. Early 20s, and he's kind of like me, just regular guy, smart looking, but regular guy. And he's saying, yeah. And I get closer and he says, yeah, I'm having trouble with my second act. And I get my agent on the coast wants it. And it's, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to like rewrite and develop a character. I got to maybe, I don't know if I'm going to get to the act break. It's going to have to deliver. And he starts talking about how he's a writer. And this girl is just wrapped up like, you know, like a fucking turban around his finger. I thought to myself, I could do that. I could really do that. I can tell girls I'm a writer. So I go out like the next day to Samuel French and bookstore, theatrical bookstore, and buy screenwriting, Sitfield, TV writing, and I'm a quick read, but I'm no real student, so I just memorize chapter titles, so because I can make shit up talking, and I'm good at that. So I begin, I go to some of my normal bars and writing, and I start making shit up. So I developed this project in order that I tell the same story. I want to tell the same story all the time. I don't want to tell a zillion stories. So I stay with one. I'm writing a screenplay. I start to talk about it, but I don't talk about it. I just throw the buzzwords in, and I'm working. I'm having fun. Oh my God. So one afternoon, I'm doing this for a few months. One afternoon, I'm at a commercial audition for a director by the name of N. Lee Lacy. He was a very famous commercial director. Do you remember? You said you were a football player, right? Do you remember you don't need to wrestle? I'm sorry, but anyway, you probably like football. Anyway, remember that Mino Green Coca-Cola commercial?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. He's the guy who directed that commercial and won a Clio for it. So very well-known director. And he had heard me a couple of times before, and we were kind of friendly. He liked me. And, whenever there was something that I might be right for, he would make sure I'd get into audition. So I'm in there and I'm doing this rap on a girl and, yes. And, I'm in my structure phase. I'm concepting and I'm trying to vision and I'm bullshitting the story, which by now was fairly well developed. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Lee. And he said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Sure." So pulls me aside and hey, listen, I don't mean to eavesdrop, but that was an interesting story you were telling. I can't wait to see. Can you show me that script when you're finished? I have an agent, William Morris, in Los Angeles, who's in the motion picture department. Please, if I like it, I'll send it to him. So I said, Lee, I gotta be honest with you, man, because you're really good to me. There's no script. There's nothing. I just I do this for girls. I do it to get laid. And he said to me, "Is it working?" And I said, "All the time." He said, "I like you, right?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You're a idiot." He said, "Mark, if you can get women to drop their pants by what you're just telling them, imagine if you would just take it the next step and actually write something." And I looked at him. I was a kid. I was like 24 years old. I said, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." I'm just thinking of the women. I'm just thinking of the sex, man. Oh, yeah, I guess you could do that. So I put the time on how long it took me. It probably took me like 8 months to write it. I gave him a script, and he said, "Okay." And I don't hear from him, so I figure, fuck it, it's no big deal. And I don't know, 2 or 3 months go by. And it's now like the next year in the time frame, and I get a call from him, and he said, "Well," and I said, "Well, what?" He said, "How would you like to move to Los Angeles?" I said, "Why am I moving to Los Angeles?" And he said, "Because we sold your script to NBC." I said, "What?"
Wow.
And so about a week later, I was on a plane. I wrapped everything up, and about a week later, landed. I landed in Los Angeles. I have some writer friends who call me the myth, right? Like even though I'm not like real famous, but I have things in my life that are um, without me patting my are sort of mythological in our business. I sold the first script I've ever written, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
especially when it was like accidental, right? It was just like an accidental. So and here's also why that my friends refer to me that is because when I landed, you know how like people come to Hollywood and I got a job as a waiter, I was a
Hmm.
bartender, I got a cab. No, I landed in Los Angeles. The day I moved to Los Angeles, I had an apartment provided for me. I had a car. I had an office. I had money in the bank, and I had William Morris as my agent. So,
Yeah, damn.
you know, I know, right? That's it. So I've had what I call a very successful mediocre career, which for me, uh, I keep working. I'm working. I'm doing stuff now. I keep going. I would rather just keep going.
Hmm.
I've had lots of fun, man. I've had so much fun.
Yeah,
I have
that's
no, yeah, I have no complaints. I've had a seriously fun life.
yeah. That I mean, all that because you got to see the Three Stooges when you were 10.
I was friends. I partied with Robin Williams. We were friends. Uh, Letterman's a friend, an old friend. Leno's a friend. These Michael Keaton. I knew Michael. Obviously both from Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
I'm one of the original paid regulars at the Comedy Store. My name's on the wall. Been on the wall for over 45 years. Um, so I've had a really interesting. And I'm still working. I'm still
Yeah.
got a show in Columbia with a producing partner down there. I just worked finishing a feature. Working on another power comedy. Keep my mind working.
Right. For sure. All right. So, one last question about Last House is why do you think
Sure.
this has been a mainstay horror movie for the past 50-ish years here?
Well, let me answer that question because I have asked myself that question more than 50 times
Hmm.
and through the years. And then the more I listen to fans at horror film conventions, the more the answer became apparent to me. Because I I found that the audience for Last House continues. It's a
Hmm.
cross generational film. Parents make their children watch it. Every young person that I've ever talked to, and I'm serious, always says to me, I heard about this movie from my parents, my dad, my mom, and often they want their children to watch it as a cautionary tale. They want them to see.
Mm.
For me, Last House. I know everybody says it's a horror movie, but I don't believe it is. And I came to this conclusion maybe 10 years ago. I hadn't seen it in a while, and I watched it, and then suddenly it hit me that horrible things happen in the movie, but what the movie really is about is this ongoing class warfare struggle that we live in. And if you watch the dinner scene in
Hmm.
Last House,
Yeah.
isolate the dinner scene, watch how Wes
Okay.
shot it, how he focuses on the food, on he focuses on table manners, how he focuses on ratty clothes that look good but they're really threadbare, you know, and how different he makes he shoots it all in black, right? There's nothing. You don't see the room. It's all in black, so you can
Right.
concentrate on the people. And that scene, yeah, to me, put just everything clicked into a gear because everything makes sense. So that's what it's
Yeah.
about for me. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's definitely a classic. I absolutely love the movie. I remember
uh,
watching it as a younger kid, and we do another show, and we did stuff like Last House on the Left and I Spit in Your Grave, and kind of that genre that exists, and just analyzing it, and it's an amazing piece of work for especially that time frame because that really wasn't
oh, sure,
shown
yeah.
in that context.
No, absolutely. It was really out there. I'm telling you, I
Yeah,
remember the reaction people had. It is, yeah, people's heads would explode. They couldn't believe it.
yeah. It's it's absolutely amazing. I think it's going to go down as like just and it already is. Obviously, everyone knows that you're having. I think you have something next month with Last House being inducted somewhere,
Yeah,
correct?
I have a personal appearance at the Frida Theater in Costa Mesa on October 5th at 1 p.m. It's a double feature, two of Wes's films. Jeremy Rain will be there too with me from Last House,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe Susan Lanier from The Hills Have Eyes is going to be there. So we'll review films and then do a Q&A, and of course, we're salespeople, so we'll have our merchandise with us.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I we had Susan on a couple weeks ago on the show, so she's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely love her. All right, Mark. Well, we're about that time. Let's get into our roundup questions here. So,
All right.
in your career, with what you're doing now, what you're working on in the future, do you ever think that CGI will overtake practical effects?
I sure hope not. I think that I think it, that sometimes it'll be a combination of both. CGI for me, I know it's efficient, but you can
Mm-hmm.
always tell. As soon as you can't tell, maybe as soon as the trained eye can't tell, I think maybe practical is in danger. But as long as a trained eye can tell, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope practical always stays and just maybe some enhancements to CGI, and that'd be the perfect sweet spot because I can't imagine people trying to not hold something physically in their hands and interact with it.
Yeah, I know. It's just there's something about old schoolness. Not that you shouldn't be progressive and move forward, obviously, but I think as a performer, the more you, the more ability you have to be tactile, not just with your words, but with your props, with your, around you scene. The
Hmm.
more you can do that, I think it just helps.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. So if you were able to work in any existing franchise or IP, is there anything that you would go, I'd want to make the next X movie, right?
Um, hmm. I don't know. I'd like to make a move. This movie I'm working on now uh, is a journey of redemption. And I
Okay.
think that life. I think constantly we're always fucking up and then trying to redeem ourselves. And I don't think there's that's what human life is.
Right.
We fuck up, we redeem ourselves. We fuck up, we redeem ourselves. So
Hmm.
I would just like to make a movie that people enjoy that takes them on a little ride, and at the end of it, they feel better than they did when they walked in.
I like it. All right. So, do you have any advice for anyone getting into the field, whether it's comedy, whether it's writing, whether it's filmmaking?
Well, yes, let's talk about comedy
Yes.
because the rest of it's a little different. If you want to be in the comedy business, the professional, real show business, comedy business, the only two places to live are New York and Los Angeles. And the only reason to go to New York is to get to Los Angeles. And anything else is bullshit.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
but Chicago, right? Oh no.
Nope. Nope. Because anyone in Chicago who's good goes to New York, Los Angeles. Because the
There you go.
people, here's why I say that. No, wait. I'm not dissing the towns. What I'm saying to you is because the people the suits, the
Mhm.
real movers and shakers who could make somebody's career happen, only live in New York and Los Angeles. So that's the only place they are.
Right.
The
That
only
makes
people who live
sense.
in these, the only people who live in these other towns are people who know these people, who maybe could recommend you to these people. But those people only live in New York and Los Angeles. So that's the reason I say this.
Right.
The reason my class of 77, the comedy store people, the reason
Mhm.
why so many of us had careers was because back in that day, 4 or 5 nights a week, a lion's share of the audience in the comedy store were studio, network, and network presidents, vice presidents, and people, and agents and managers. And those are the people who can look at a talent. Like Gary Marshall looked at Robin Williams, okay,
Mhm.
doing stand up and said, well, I think maybe there's a TV show for this guy, right?
Right.
So, right, that's where that happened in the comedy store. Somebody told Gary about this guy named Robin, this crazy guy from San Francisco. Well, let me see. I'll go. I'll have a look. I'll go in there. We'll sit down. Ooh, he's good. I like this guy. We'll write a show for him. Okay, I worked with Gary, so I know how he talks. So,
Oh yeah.
so,
I think you sound just like him.
so thank you. So, uh, so that's why I people, and then you get people. I ask these questions. They go, "What's the matter with Houston or this place or that?" Because nobody fucking lives there who can move your career along. That's why.
Yeah.
So,
All right, Mark, you ready for your random horror trivia question?
okay.
All right. What is the name of the character in Poltergeist who says they're here?
Oh, wasn't that woman? Rosenberg. No. Oh, fuck. I can't remember, but I think it was that woman who was the medium.
It was the little girl when she's
The
looking
little
at the
girl.
TV. Yeah,
Oh, that's that. Okay.
all good, all good.
Well, no, I don't
All right.
care. You know.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's all good. So, Mark, where can people follow you and find out more about your works that are coming out that you're working on?
Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. I post things occasionally.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. It's been an absolute blast. I hope you had a blast tonight.
Thanks for having me. Sorry if I got a little windy, but I am my own
No,
favorite subject.
all good. This is why I do the show, to have great conversations with people like yourself.
All right, man.
All right. Well, thank you,
Take
Mark,
care.
and we'll see everyone next time. Don't get lost in the void. Good night.
Okay, man. Take care.